This week, Datadog is tracking coordinated GitHub API enumeration using ghost accounts, leaked tokens, and normal looking API traffic, which is a reminder that public metadata can still become operational intelligence. XAI's Grok build CLI reportedly transmitted repository data without redaction. So the AI coding tool question is not just, does this help me build faster? It is, what did it read? And where did that data go? AWS Security Hub added network scanning and exposure impact analysis, which gets cloud security closer to the attacker's view. What is actually reachable? And what can that reachable thing access next? And Microsoft says AI powered vulnerability discovery is changing patch management. More bugs found faster means more pressure on the teams that have to test, deploy, and recover from patches. Put those together, and the theme this week is exposure. Who can map your systems? Who can read your code? Who can reach your infrastructure? And who owns the response when the map gets too accurate? I'm Brian Teller from Teller's Tech, and this is Ship It Weekly. Welcome back to Ship It Weekly, the show about the DevOps, SRE, cloud, platform, and security stories that actually matter when you are the person who has to keep the thing running at 3 a.m. If you are new here, follow or subscribe wherever you are watching or listening. And if you want the weekly story list and source links, check out oncallbrief.com. For past episodes, full show notes, and more from the show, head over to shipitweekly.fm. This week, we start with GitHub API enumeration, because attackers do not always need an exploit to build a useful map of your organization. Then we get into Grok build CLI and the data boundary around AI coding tools. After that, AWS Security Hub network scanning and impact analysis. Then Microsoft warning that AI-powered vulnerability discovery may mean more patches, faster timelines, and less room for slow change management. In the lightning round, Halu squatting, Cloudflare control plane incidents, Node tar VCEs, ServiceNow authentication risk, quantum procurement pressure, and Lambda managed instances for Java cold starts. And we close with something from SRE Weekly about post-incident reviews, authority gaps, and the difference between documenting an incident and actually learning from it. Let's get into it. First up, Datadog Security Research published a write-up on coordinated GitHub API enumeration and access token abuse. This one matters because it is not a flashy exploit story. No zero-day, no dramatic breach chain, just API traffic. Datadog is tracking campaigns that use GitHub's API to enumerate organizations, repositories, users, members, followers, public repos, private repo paths, and related metadata. Some of that data is public by design. That is the uncomfortable part. Public repos, org details, user profiles, REST endpoints, GraphQL queries, relationships between people and projects. Individually, those answers may look harmless. At scale, they become a map. Who works at the company? What naming patterns exist? Which internal project names leak into public references? Which private repo paths might exist? Which users are worth targeting? Recon is not harmless just because the data is public. Datadog also called out ghost accounts, older GitHub accounts created years ago, left dormant, and later used for API traffic across many organizations. An old account blends better than one created yesterday. Then add compromised OAuth tokens or personal access tokens, and enumeration can turn into access. Now, the actor may be probing private repo paths, listing repos, checking commit history, or cloning code. The takeaway is simple. Treat GitHub like a production surface, not just source control. Watch token scopes, OAuth apps, old pats, dormant users, outside collaborators, audit logs, GraphQL usage, private repo path probes, and sudden burst of API activity. GitHub holds the instructions for how your company builds and ships software. Attackers know that. Your GitHub org is part of your attack surface. Second story. On-Call Brief flagged reports that xAI's Grok build CLI transmitted repository data and file contents without redaction. The details around one tool may change. The bigger lesson does not. If an AI coding tool reads your repo, that is access. If it reads your .env file, Terraform, Helm charts, Kubernetes manifests, runbooks, incident notes, or internal docs, that is access. And if it sends that context to a cloud service, that is data movement. That means security, legal, compliance, and platform teams need to know about it. We spent years building controls around source code, private repos, SSO, branch protections, secret scanning, vendor reviews, access reviews, least privilege. Then an AI coding tool shows up and says, I can help you build this app. Cool. But what can it read? Where does the data go? Is it retained? Is it used for training? Does it respect ignored files? Does it read Git history? Does it upload the whole repo or selected context? Can the organization audit usage? Those are not boring procurement questions. Those are production security questions. Repos are not just code. They contain architecture, service names, build pipelines, IAM assumptions, deploy rules, vulnerability hints, and sometimes secrets. The lesson is not never use AI coding tools. That ship has sailed. The lesson is to stop treating them like harmless editor plugins. They are repo readers. Sometimes they are command runners. Sometimes they are package installers. Sometimes they are cloud-connected agents sitting next to your source code and local environments. So they need policy, review, and boundaries around where they can be used. Because it was just on my laptop is not a data boundary. Quick break from the news. The Ship It Weekly shop is officially open at shop.tellerstech.com. I've got a few Ship It Weekly t-shirt designs up there now, and I spent way too much time sourcing the actual shirts because I wanted them to feel like good trade show shirts people actually keep. Think of those soft Datadog style shirts that you get at conferences and somehow still wear 2 years later. That was the target. I'm wearing one of those now so you can get a feel for it on video. If you want to support the show and rep the merch a little bit, head over to shop.tellerstech.com. For the next few weeks, coupon code SHIPTHESTORE gets you 20% off your order. That is Ship the Store. Again, shop.tellerstech.com. All right, back to it. Third story. AWS Security Hub added network scanning and impact analysis for exposure findings. The short version, cloud security is moving from this might be exposed based on configuration to we checked from the outside, this is actually reachable, and here is what that exposure could lead to. That is useful. Network scanning probes resources from the internet to identify actual reachability, not just what the route tables, security groups, and diagrams suggest. Actual reachability, public IPs, virtual machines, load balancers, reachable ports, services behind them. That matters because cloud reality drifts. A public IP gets attached during troubleshooting. A port gets opened and forgotten. A test load balancer lives forever. A Kubernetes service becomes public because someone copied a Helm value from dev. Config analysis is helpful, but active scanning gets closer to the attacker's view. Can I reach it? What port is open? What service is there? What evidence proves it? Then, impact analysis adds the blast radius side. AWS says Security Hub can map downstream resources that could be compromised beyond the initial exposed resource. That matters because exposure alone is not the whole story. An exposed test box with no useful permissions is one kind of risk. An exposed instance with a role that can read production secrets, write to S3, or reach a database is a very different risk. So do not only prioritize by severity label, prioritize by reachability and blast radius. Public and reachable matters. Public and reachable with dangerous IAM matters more. And when something is exposed, do not stop at closing the port. Ask who owns it, how long it was exposed, what it could access, what logs prove activity, and what prevents it from coming back. The tool finding the exposure is only step one. Someone still has to own the cleanup. Fourth story. Microsoft published a post about evolving Windows vulnerability management for AI-powered discovery. And even if you are not managing Windows endpoints, the larger trend matters. AI is not just helping people write code faster. It is helping defenders find bugs faster. It is helping researchers analyze code faster. And eventually, attackers get better at this too. Microsoft talked about using an agentic scanning harness called MDash to analyze Windows at scale with multiple models, validation, human review, and then high confidence findings going to engineers. The operator takeaway is that faster discovery means more update pressure. A lot of companies still treat patching like a monthly chore. Patch Tuesday happens. Vuln teams triage. Endpoint teams test. App owners delay. Exceptions pile up. Someone asks if it can wait until the next window. That rhythm already struggles. AI accelerated discovery makes the tempo worse. More findings, faster analysis, shorter response windows, more pressure to know what is actually affected. This does not mean patch everything instantly and hope. Patching is still production change. Patches break things. Agents break things. Middleware breaks things. Security fixes can have side effects. But patching needs to look more like a real operational system. Known inventory, staged rollout, rollback, ownership, emergency paths, and coverage reporting. Not spreadsheet theater. If your patch process depends on 10 people manually asking app owners how they feel, AI is going to make that pain worse. Security updates are becoming production operations, so they need production-grade process around them. Quick lightning round. First, halluc squatting. AI coding agents can hallucinate package or repo names, and attackers can squat those names ahead of time. If the agent tries to install the fake dependency, it can pull malicious code. Do not let agents install packages just because the name sounds plausible. Second, Cloudflare had dashboard and API incidents. The edge may keep serving traffic, but if the dashboard or API is down, incident response can still be impaired. Data plane and control plane are different things. Both matter. Third, NodeTar had a cluster of denial of service issues. Archive parsing sits in package managers, build systems, CI jobs, artifact handling, upload pipelines, and scanners. If you accept archives from untrusted sources, tar parsing bugs matter. Fourth, ServiceNow had a requires authentication equals false issue. One unauthenticated REST endpoint in a platform that holds tickets, assets, workflows, and incident context can become an enterprise data exposure problem fast. Fifth, France is pushing quantum risk into procurement language. That is how post-quantum migration becomes real. Procurement, compliance, vendor questionnaires, and data retention expectation. And last, AWS wrote about Lambda managed instances for Java cold starts. Serverless keeps getting features that look more like managed capacity under the hood. That is not bad, but the abstraction is not magic. Cold starts, warm capacity, runtime behavior, and cost still matter. The human closer this week comes from SRE Weekly. Issue 525 had a few places around post incident reviews, human in the loop authority gaps, and whether teams confuse collecting artifacts with actually learning. That fits this episode, because this whole week is about maps and exposure. Datadog is talking about attackers mapping GitHub organizations. Grok build raises the question of what AI coding tools read. Security Hub is mapping what is reachable from the internet. Microsoft is talking about AI finding vulnerabilities faster. Maps are useful, but maps do not fix anything by themselves. An exposure finding does not close the port. An API log does not revoke the token. A patch bulletin does not patch the fleet. A post-mortem timeline does not create learning. A human approval step does not guarantee judgment if the human has no context. That last one matters. Human in the loop sounds safe, but if the human is pulled in at the worst moment, with the least context, under the most pressure, the approval step can become theater. Same with post-incident reviews. A meeting is not learning. A timeline is not learning. A document in the wiki is not learning. Those things can help, but the learning happens when the system changes, when ownership becomes clear, when the runbook improves, when alert noise goes down, when the risky default gets removed, when the next operator is less dependent on luck. So the question is not just, did we review the incident? The question is, what changed because of it? Visibility is not ownership. A map is not a fix. That's it for this week of Ship It Weekly. We covered GitHub API enumeration, Grok build CLI, and AI coding tool data boundaries, AWS Security Hub network scanning, and impact analysis, Microsoft's AI-powered vulnerability discovery and patch cadence, plus hollow squatting, Cloudflare incidents, Node tar CVEs, ServiceNow authentication risk, quantum procurement pressure, and Lambda managed instances. If this episode was useful, follow or subscribe wherever you are watching or listening. If you know someone dealing with GitHub org security, AI coding tools, cloud exposure, or patch pressure, send them this one. Also, the Ship It Weekly shop is open at shop.tellerstech.com. Use coupon code SHIPTHESTORE for 20% off your order for the next few weeks. Again, ship the store at shop.tellerstech.com. You can find the weekly brief at oncallbrief.com and the full show notes, links, and past episodes at shipitweekly.fm. I'm Brian Teller from Teller's Tech. Thanks for listening. And remember, visibility is not ownership. A map is not a fix.